Hello, this is Todd Luck. I finally broke down and just ended up getting all of the figures in Wave 1 for Masters of the Universe Revelation. And so I thought I'd just do a video about this wave and about this line of figures, and not really a review, but just kind of my thoughts and how I ended up getting these. And so let's just define what this figure line is. So as you can probably tell, these are collectible figures. And so they have a lot of your articulation that you're going to expect. They've got like double jointed knees and elbows if you need He-Man to do like yoga or something. He's got the ab cut, and I think there's cuts on the legs right there and stuff like that. So a lot of that extra articulation you would expect from a collectible figure. Now, what scale are these things on? So He-Man measures at 7 inches tall, and that towers over your collectible figures that from Hasbro, like Lightning Collection with Power Rangers or the Marvel Legends figures. And so they are much bigger. The Marvel Legends usually comes up to like maybe 6.5 inches tall. So these are much bigger. And even figures that are just abnormally tall, like Thor here, he actually does come up to about the same height, but you can tell that he just looks very puny compared to He-Man. It's kind of like comparing Thor to Hulk or something. So clearly these are definitely built on a bigger scale than your average collectible figure you're going to find out there, at least from Hasbro. My understanding is McFarlane Toys is putting out figures on the 7-inch scale for DC now. Maybe those stack up a little better. I'm not sure. I don't have any of those. So I know your next question. What about classics? They were built bigger, right? So here's some comparisons with a few of the classics figures I have. And so I've got Adora and Catra with Revelation Evil Lyn. As you can tell, they're a bit taller and they are built to be bigger. They're thicker. They just look larger than she does. And same thing with Adam here. It's a little more subtle, but his muscles are a little bigger than He-Man's. Even though He-Man is a little taller, which actually works quite well, right? He-Man probably should be taller than Adam. The reason why they're bigger is because the classics figures were made to recreate that form factor where He-Man was big and bulky in the original vintage line. And, I'm holding up my Origins He-Man here to give you an example. But, he's just a bigger, chunkier figure with like a bodybuilder build. And that's what classics was made on. And so Revelation is obviously this line, which is actually called Masterverse. It's actually going to go beyond the Revelation figures, but the bodies here are a bit leaner and more realistic for both the females and the males. And so when it goes beyond Revelation, there's supposed to be a She-Ra figure. It's just going to be up to you if you think, a She-Ra about this size is going to fit in with an Adora that looks like this. And here's an example with another classics figure. This is Cyclone, my favorite Masters of the Universe character. As you can tell, all the guys are going to come up a little shorter, but they're made to be thicker and chunkier. And so, it just depends on, if that looks right to you or not. I would say it's a little bit off, but that's not surprising. I mean, the point of coming up with a new line like Masterverse is to be a new line, and it's not necessarily to be compatible with old toy lines. However, what it is compatible with, and this is kind of crazy, is actually compatible with Origins. Now, I'm not talking about size when I'm talking about compatibility. Obviously, 7 inches is way bigger than 5.5 inches, right? But what I am talking about is accessories and heads. Now, obviously, that's going to have some limited use with a character like Mossman, but if you ever wanted to know what Beastman and Mossman would look like with each other's heads, there you go. All right, and so bad news on Evil Lyn. Unfortunately, the pegs are not compatible at all. I cannot get this head for Origins Evil Lyn onto this peg. And this peg just lets the Revelation head just sit on there. And obviously it is just nowhere near the same proportions, but it kind of looks cool as like a super deformed version of Evil Lyn. And just in case you wondered, here's what the other head looks like on Evil Lyn. So here's Skeletor with his head swapped. We're getting a little bit closer to something that looks cool. So obviously we can see the origin head, right, that's on the Revelation body is much bigger than the Revelation head here, right? And I think the Revelation heads are sometimes kind of small. Mossman's was a little bit small. Skeletor's is way too small, in my opinion. And obviously we can see the color of the hoods is a bit different than, you know, the rest of their outfit. I don't think it's too bad on Revelation Skeletor with Origin Skeletor head. I actually think it looks pretty cool. Obviously, a customizer can have a ball with this, you know, and recolor the hood and everything like that. But where we're going to hit pay dirt on this is with He-Man. Now, the cool thing about these figures, if they have harnesses, just like the Origins line and the vintage figures, you can actually remove those harnesses. You don't always get that with collectible figures, but these give you that option. And so that means you can put on the Revelation armor on your Origins He-Man. How awesome is that? And that's not all. Yes, that Revelation head does fit perfectly on that Origins body. Now, the only drawback is that the skin tone for the face is a bit different from the body. But man, I would love for Mattel to put out an official version of this. I mean, they've already got most of the parts already just there, ready to go. Just repaint the face, you know, give us, you know, some new arm pieces to match what he wore in Revelation and just go with it, man. I would love to get an official Revelation version of He-Man in Origins. And of course, if it fits on your He-Man, it's going to fit on your Adam. And man, I got to tell you, I love this head for Adam. I mean, it just has this kind of peaceful, serene look to it that I think is just perfect for Adam. Actually, I may just use this as an alternate head for Adam when I put up my Revelation He-Man at some point. It's just great. Now, the skin tone is still different, but for some reason, I don't mind it as much here, maybe because I see the skin tone less on Adam. But I think it's just really, really cool bonus to get like this really cool alternate head for your He-Man and or Adam figure for Origins. So as far as compatibility between the Revelation body and the Origins head and harness, well, unfortunately, Origins harness just doesn't work at all. The Origins harness is specifically designed for an Origins body that you can take apart, which you can't do with Revelation. But I've tried the He-Man harness from my vintage He-Man figure, and it doesn't really fit very well. You can kind of get it to sit there, but the body's just too big for that harness. The head, however, from Origins does fit on here perfectly. Little bit big, but I think it looks pretty cool. The big thing is, though, of course, the skin tone is super different between the Origins face and the Revelation body, but again, customizers might be able to do something about that. And for those who are curious, here is the vintage head with the Revelation body. This is the vintage head they throw in with like battle armor He-Man, so there you go. And while I'm at it, here's the Origins body with the Revelation harness and that vintage inspired head on it. And by the way, the He-Man compatibility seems to be unique in Wave 1. The harnesses for Skeletor just didn't really work between Revelation and Origins. It'll be interesting to see what will be compatible going forward. So quick thoughts on the figures. Evil Lyn is just about perfect. There is nothing I can think of that they could have included that they didn't. So she has a unhelmeted head, a helmeted head, two sets of open hands, two sets of gripping hands, two sets of fists. She comes with a long staff. She comes with her short staff, which is show accurate for this version of Evil Lyn because it got chopped in half in the the Battle of Grayskull, and so if she's wearing this, then she should have her short staff. But it's really cool that they included a holder for the staff. I think that's really, really cool, that little detail that they included in there. And then there's this pouch, which is also removable, and that's really cool. Again, just really, really great figure. It looks wonderful, perfectly captures this look. And the curious thing is they didn't even need to include this version of the staff because, like I said, by the time she's dressing like this, the staff isn't like this, right? It's been cut in half. So it makes me wonder if they are going to make a second version of Evelyn, you know, from the Battle of Grayskull, her classic look when she's fighting Tila in that first episode. I hope so. I think that would be great. And so here's Mossman. And the funny thing about Revelation is no matter what Mattel posts about Revelation, even if it's just about the action figures, it gets trolls. And one of them was like, "Why did they make a figure of Mossman? He dies within a minute of the first episode." The figure, the body, it's actually based on his appearance in episode 5. So yeah, the figure is kind of a combination. So body, definitely from episode 5 when he's chilling and talking to Adam. The head, you know, and this vine attack attachment is based on his appearance in the first episode when he obviously looked a bit different. You know, he was a giant and all that. But that's clearly what it was inspired by. Plus the fierce, you know, snarling head is similar to his vintage action figure. And he does come with all these hands. He's got 2 sets of open hands and 1 set of gripping hands. And I would have preferred to have an alternate head instead of the hands. And the reason for that is episode 5 was a very different appearance. He was just kind of chilling and talking to Adam, and he was very calm and serene, and I would have loved an alternate head to portray that. That being said, this is an amazing, amazing figure. I love it to death. This is my dream Mossman figure because this is him in all of his glory as an elemental plant god, and I love it. Plus, he doesn't smell, so I don't have to worry about him smelling up my other accessories or toys that he's around or that he's stored with, so that's also cool. And here's Skeletor. This is the most badass Skeletor figure for the, honestly, most badass Skeletor we've ever gotten. It is amazing. It does come with 2 interchangeable hands and a shaping staff. The harness is removable. The cape is removable, and you can have him just with the harness, as I've shown you. My only qualm with him, and probably my only qualm with the entire line, is the head is a little small, and it actually looks pretty good from this angle because I'm shooting it from below. But if you're looking at it from above, it is a little small, and it is not yellow, which is not screen accurate. I wish it was, but man, it just looks very, very badass, very metal, just amazing. And this Havoc staff, oh my God, they really just knocked the Havoc staff out of the ballpark. It looks amazing. And here's He-Man, and to be honest with you, this is a pretty impressive figure for a character who's usually kind of the vanilla flavor of this brand. He comes with 2 hands, he comes with a shield, and he comes with a very shiny sword, and he has all the details you would expect in his Revelation appearance. And that head sculpt is just really amazing. I think it just really captures his nobility and honestly his innocence, because right, you know, Adam is a young guy, you know, very idealistic, you know, very virtuous person. And I think it's just all captured in that head sculpt, and it's amazing. Now, that being said, I wish we could have gotten an alternate head sculpt. So I think this is an amazing head sculpt for a pose like this where he's just neutral or in a heroic pose. But if he's in a battle pose against Skeletor or another villain, he just looks too serene. You know, Skeletor looks like he wants to kill He-Man. He-Man looks like, yo, chill out, dude. Like, I really wish there was a alternate head where, you know, he has, you know, the gritting teeth or a fierce look, you know, something more traditionally He-Man. I think that would have been fantastic if we could have got that. Just in case you're wondering, there is no sheath on his back for the sword, but I think it looks fine if you just want to slip it into the harness. So why did I finally go ahead and get the figures in Wave 1 for Revelation? So I've been a Masters Universe fan since I was like 4 or 5 years old. Back in the 80s, I followed the original brand, and I have always loved Masters of the Universe. It's Masters of the Universe and Star Wars are my two big things as far as toy collecting goes. But I'm not really big into getting redundant figures, right? I'm not like, oh, I've got to have it in a 6-inch scale if I already have it in a smaller scale. I'm usually pretty happy with having it, the way I originally had it. Origins kind of changed my mind a little bit. I was originally going to get replacement figures, like, for instance, my He-Man is missing his crotch, so I got He-Man here. But I was so impressed by Origins He-Man. I was just like, man, the articulation and all the improvements they made over the vintage figures. I'm just going to actually collect this and just get the whole line, or at least a lot of it. Not every character, but most of them. And then Revelation hit the shelf, and I was just like, oh, hell no, I don't need He-Man. I already got a new He-Man. I like my new He-Man. I don't need a bigger version of He-Man. But if you've been watching my videos, I want an Andra figure, and I don't care what version it is. It could be the comic version, it could be Revelation, it could be a combination of the two, but I want one. And I don't know if we're ever going to get one in Origins, but then they showed the Revelation figure for Andra in this line, and it is amazing. And I'm just like, yeah, I want it. I want that. I'm going to go get that. And so that hasn't come out yet. But, it gets you thinking like, oh, well, wouldn't Andra look kind of stupid on my shelf without Teela? And so, okay, now I'm getting Andra and Teela. And then I'm just looking at the shelf and I'm thinking like, well, Evil Lynn is a female. And so she's probably going to be one of the rarer figures, and she's probably going to be more expensive to get if I change my mind and want her later. So I might as well pick her up now. And so I got Evil Lynn, loved her. And then I was like thinking like, well, I really love Moss Man, and this is like the Moss Man figure I've been waiting for. Okay, I'll get Moss Man. And then I got He-Man and Skeletor after I just thought about how much Revelation meant to me. We're anticipating part 2 right now. And, this only happens every, 20 years, I guess? We got Filmation, then we got 2002, we got Mike Young Productions, and then, now it's 2021, we've got Revelation. And so this is the third coming of He-Man. And I got to tell you, every single time, if I'm watching a good episode, it doesn't matter if it's Filmation or Mike Young Productions or Revelation. I mean, I just get ecstatic, man. I cannot describe to you my enthusiasm and my love for this franchise, especially when the animation's good. And it's just never been better, guys. I mean, the animation, the voice acting, and the writing. I mean, my God, I just never imagined something that would be this emotionally engaging and have this much depth. I never in a million years imagined that I would tear up watching a Masters of the Universe episode. And I never imagined there would be a He-Man story that centered around the 5 stages of grief, and that it would be just so raw and so powerful and so real. And guys, look, I understand that, we all gonna haggle over plot points and all that stuff and portrayals of characters, and we would rather them do this than that and all that stuff. And, I understand, maybe it's too real, maybe it's too raw, maybe you wish they zigged where they zagged. But I gotta tell you guys, if you don't know how Teela feels in part 1, then you've lived a very blessed life. But probably at some point you are going to understand that feeling. And I got to tell you, it is complex, it is complicated. And, there's a point in episode 5 where Teela just comes to acceptance and lets that person go, or tries to at least, and just like, you've earned heaven. And I hope I get to that point myself. I think real life emotions are a little more complex than what we see on the screen sometimes. But I just, that was a very powerful emotional journey. And it was just amazing. And it just felt so relevant, especially with, where the world is at right now with COVID, and all that. And it was just a very special animated series. And I'm really, really looking forward to what they're going to do in part two. And definitely going to do some reviews of it and all that good stuff, man, when it comes out. But definitely looking forward to it. But yeah, that's why I finally broke down, and got the Revelation Wave 1. And, probably be picking up, like I said, I'll definitely be picking up a few more. Definitely impressed with the figures. Good line. So that's all my thoughts, all my ramblings. Like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, good journey.